What does the shape of your world actually tell you about your story? Consider the difference. A spherical world implies a cycle. If you sail far enough west, you eventually return to the east. It is a story of containment and return. But an infinite plane? That is a journey with no beginning and no end. Or a flat disk with an edge? That is a story defined by a physical, terrifying limit. The geometry of your planet is not just a container for your map. It is the stage upon which every civilization, war, and myth is built. To ensure our world is more than just a drawing, we need to define these rules before we draw a single coastline. I'm going to use the planetary shape template from the Worldbuilder's Guidebook. You can grab your own copy at the link below to follow along with this process. Together, we are going to take a blank page and forge Gyrthalion, a world where the shape itself dictates a war between cosmic winds. The page is open. The ink is fresh. Let's define the boundaries of our reality. We begin at the foundation, the planetary shape template. This document is not merely a physical description, it is the physics engine of your setting. By defining the geometry, whether spherical, flat, or cylindrical, you are inadvertently writing the rules for your weather patterns, your travel logistics, and even the religions that rise from the dirt. Geometry is not just a backdrop, it dictates the baseline reality that your civilizations must survive in. We begin with Section 1, the shape of the world. You must commit to a configuration. Is it a standard sphere, a flat plane, an endless cylinder? If you choose a non-spherical world, you are immediately tasked with defining the edges. Is the boundary an impassable wall of ice or a waterfall dropping into an infinite void? Simultaneously, you must define the celestial context. How does this object sit in the void? Does it orbit a star, creating defined years, or is it a stationary plane, perhaps resting on cosmic pillars, creating a timeless stasis? Section 2. Geographical implications. This is where we determine how the land behaves. On a standard sphere, land masses ride on tectonic plates that drift on a molten core, creating collision zones, rift valleys, and drifting continents. On a flat plane, the land is often static, anchored to a bedrock that does not move. You must also decide how this shape dictates terrain distribution. Does the spherical curvature create frozen polar caps at the extremes? Or does a flat world create a uniform, temperate climate that stretches endlessly from the center to the rim? Section 3. Celestial mechanics. This is the clockwork of your universe. It defines not just timekeeping, but survival. You must determine the source of your light and the rhythm of your shadows. On a sphere, axial tilt drives the seasons. Winter is a geometric inevitability. But on a flat world or inside a cylinder, do you have a moving sun that passes overhead? Or perhaps a fixed, pulsing light source that dims and brightens like a dying coal? These choices decide whether your farmers plant by the calendar or by the whims of a god. Section 4. Travel and movement. The shape of your world dictates the fundamental logic of navigation. On a sphere, the cardinal directions are a loop. If you sail west long enough, you eventually return from the east, a truth that encourages bold exploration and circumnavigation. On a flat world, travel is linear and finite. To sail west is to move permanently away from the center, eventually reaching a hard limit. This forces a choice in cartography. Do your mapmakers struggle with complex spherical projections to flatten a globe? Or are their maps literal, one-to-one representations of a flat plane? Section 5. cultural and perceptual impact. This moves us from the map to the mind. How does the physical shape of the horizon shape the beliefs of your people? In a geocentric, spherical world, inhabitants often believe they are the protected center of creation, a belief that breeds arrogance and stability. In a flat world with a visible, terrifying edge, religion is often built around the fear of that boundary, a theology of containment. This section asks you to bridge the gap between cold physics and deep philosophy. And finally, Section 6, Unique Phenomena. This is your license to break the rules, but only consistent with the geometry you chose. Does a flat world have edge gravity, where down suddenly becomes sideways? Does a tidally locked sphere have a zone of perpetual twilight where the sun never sets? These aren't just magical quirks, they are physical anomalies derived directly from your shape. This section allows you to introduce the weird factor that makes your world memorable. These are the questions. Now it is time for the answers. We are going to take this blank framework and inject a specific set of constraints to see what happens. We are building a world defined by a bipolar climate and a fractured crust. Today, we watch as Gyrthalion comes together. Now, let's apply these questions to our build, Gyrthalion. For the shape, I've decided to keep it grounded. Gyrthalion is a sphere, sitting comfortably in the habitable zone. It has a standard axial tilt, which gives us a nice, regular 25-hour day. But even with a standard shape, the implications are huge. It means the horizon is just a curve, not a cliff. The people here understand the physics of their world. They know the Earth is round. For the celestial context, I didn't want empty space. I wanted the outer planes to bleed into reality. We have two moons acting as physical anchors. The bright moon acts as a conduit for chaotic vitality. Think of it like the Feywild. Its twin, the pale moon, is a sink for entropy and stasis, much like the Shadowfell. And because the barrier between worlds is so thin here, the upper atmosphere is constantly lit by these planar energies manifesting as permanent, shifting auroras. Because of those moons, I couldn't just use standard physics for the weather. I designed a bipolar climatic engine. On Earth, both poles are frozen. On Gyrthalion, the poles are metaphysical opposites. The north is a sink of stasis. Influenced by the entropy of the pale moon, it is freezing, heavy, and motionless. The south, however, is a font of vitality. Influenced by the bright moon, the ocean there practically boils with life and heat. This creates a global conveyor belt. The warm southern energy rushes north to fill the void, colliding with the cold air at the center. The result is the Milky Equator, a chaotic belt of fog, storms, and powerful trade winds driven by the planet desperately trying to balance itself. Moving to the land itself, I decided to fracture the world down the middle. We have a central meridian ocean separating two massive continents. To the west lies Zapadia. I designed this with a massive northwestern block that funnels down into a narrow central isthmus. That choke point is intentional. It's going to be a strategic nightmare for any empire trying to control the continent. To the east lies Ostrovia, which stands as a heavy counterweight, a clean, vast northern expanse, and a distinct southeastern subcontinent that feels almost entirely cut off from the rest of the world. To keep the scale manageable, I've organized the entire world into a 5x4 project grid. This isn't just for coordinates, it defines the biome logic and the narrative function of each latitude. Row A is the glacial north, mostly open water freezing into the ice cap. Row B is the mountainous core. I placed the highest peaks here to serve as natural fortresses, creating the perfect geography for ancient, isolationist strongholds. Row C holds the fertile plains. This is the breadbasket and the primary migration corridor where empires will inevitably clash. Finally, Row D is the vital fringe, a chaotic scatter of tropical subcontinents dominating the warm southern seas, designed specifically for high seas naval adventure. The geology of Gyrthalion is designed to enforce one specific rule: Balkanization. The crust is shattered into 17 distinct tectonic plates that constantly grind against each other. For example, here in the east, the collision at Interaction 34 creates the Titanic volcanic mountains, a hyperseismic zone of ash and fire. In the center, Interaction 13 drives the Great Central Uplift. You have to understand, these aren't just mountains, they are impassable physical walls. I placed them here specifically to separate the fertile basins, making global unification logistically impossible. The hydrography creates the circulatory system of the planet. I've defined the oceans not just by depth, but by their metaphysical properties. The Northern Ocean is static, cold, and preserving, a vast, heavy mirror that barely moves. In contrast, the Southern Ocean is an upwelling of violent life and heat. This creates a global churn. The warm, chaotic waters of the South rush north to revive the stagnant waters of the pole. It creates a distinct north-south axis for naval travel that every sailor in this world has to respect. Because the tectonic plates have shattered the land into such difficult terrain, the rivers become the only viable highways for civilization. I've carved out massive drainage basins like the North Central Artery and the Western Drain. In a world divided by magnetic mountains and frozen plateaus, these rivers are the only places where trade can flow easily. If you want to know where the wars will be fought in Gyrthalion, don't look at the borders, look at the river mouths. And finally, we look at the axioms, the narrative rules enforced by the geography. First, planar influence. The bipolar weather ensures that vitality and stasis are physical forces carried by the trade winds. Second, balkanization. Those tectonic walls we built make global conquest physically impossible. Third, migration. The shape of the continents forces populations into the central isthmus, a bottleneck of constant conflict. And fourth, established dominance. The map itself chooses the winners, giving the protected mountain basins to the ancient elves while pushing younger races to the exposed, fractured coasts. The map is drawn, the physics are calculated, the axioms are locked. But a world is not just lines on parchment, it is a place where people have to live, breathe, and survive. It is time to leave the architect's table and stand on the ground. Let's see what the shape of the world actually looks like to the people living in it. To walk Gyrthalion is to cling to a gem floating in the void. We do not stand upon a board, we live on a curve. This is the truth known to every sailor who watches a mast rise from the deep, and every mountaineer who sees the earth bow in reverence to the stars. The horizon is not an edge, it is a reminder of our containment. And the sky above us is heavy. We are watched by two great eyes, closer than the stars and far more cruel. The Solon, the bright moon, burns with a radiant, chaotic lunacy.
It pulls at the tides of our oceans and the iron in our blood, anchoring the wild magic of the Sylvaris to the firmament. Its silent sister, the Gwyllion, hangs pale and grey. She is the watcher of Entropy, the pale moon who reminds us that the Morvath waits for all stone and flesh to crumble. They loom over the peaks of Camorra and the salt flats of Selenia, casting double shadows that ensure no creature ever feels truly alone. High above their dance burns the Calithan. It is the sun, the golden sire. It is the source of our days, but it is distant, distinct, and indifferent. It gives us light, but in Gyrthalion, even the sunlight feels old. The shape of the world dictates its suffering. Our globe is a battleground stretched between two cosmic extremes, a bipolar engine that drives the breath of the planet. To the far north lies the Moros, the ocean of stasis. Here, the influence of the Morvath bleeds through the poles. The ice does not merely freeze, it preserves. The wind bites with a lethargy that settles into the marrow, and the waters are heavy, dark, and motionless. It is the anchor of the world's quiet death. To the far south lies the Zyva, the ocean of vitality. Here the waters do not freeze. They boil with a cancerous life, fueled by the bleed of the Sylvaris. The southern gales are warm, wet, and violent, carrying the seeds of storms that lash the equator. We live in the scar between them. The desperate, fevered winds of the Zviva rush north to meet the cold, heavy silence of the Moroz. Where they collide, in the temperate belt where our kingdoms rise and fall, the weather is a constant argument. The trade winds are not gentle breezes. They are the grinding gears of the planet, driving the rains that feed the wrecker and filling the sails that dare the Sidrian deep. The land itself is fractured, a testament to a violent birth. We cling to two great rafts of stone, separated by the heaving chest of the Central Ocean. To the west lies Zapadia, a creature of three parts, hardened against the salt and the sea. In the north is Kovalaya, the anvil, a block of highlands and jagged coasts that defies the chill of the Miraz. Below it lies the Virat, the gate. This narrow, desperate isthmus binds the north to the south. It is the neck of the continent, a choke point where armies and merchants alike are forced to tread. And finally, Selenia, the southern sweep, a peninsula reaching eagerly toward the warmth of the Jiva, rich with salt and sun. To the east lies Ostravia, vast and imposing, a wall of stone against the sunrise. Its heart is Camorra, the northern expanse, a place of stone and old silence, facing the freezing winds. Below it hangs the Dal, the southern reach. It is a subcontinent unto itself, distant and distinct, separated from the main mass by rugged terrain. Dividing them is the Rudna spine. This is not merely a mountain range, it is a wound. Rising in the east, these red iron peaks twist the magnetic fields of the world, mocking our compasses. They are not merely magnetic, they bleed fire.
Smoke drifts eternally from their summits, a reminder that the earth beneath us is restless. The architecture of humility. Because the ground shakes often, the people of Gyrthalion have learned to build with fear in their hearts. We do not use mortar that cracks, we use interlocking joints and wide, heavy bases. Our towers are few and thick, our halls are long and low. We build to sway, for the earth has taught us that what is rigid will surely break. Water defines the shape of our lives. The Circulatory deep is the corridor of history, the treacherous throat of civilization that binds Zapadia to Ostrovia. But beyond the known world lies the Colomor, the great encircling ocean. It is the world ring, the vast, lonely expanse that wraps the far side of the sphere. Few sail the Colomor and return. It is the barrier that keeps us huddled together, afraid of the silence beyond. The lands bleed water as they bleed fire. From the high glaciers of Kovalia flows the Zapad flow. In the heart of the world, the mighty Reka is born in the cloud-veiled heights of the Stena Ridge, carving a slow, mournful path southeast. And in the east, the short, violent Bistra cuts through the rock, rushing to the sea as if fleeing the mountains that birthed it. This is the pulse of Gyrthalion. It is no longer just data points on a page. It is a place. And just like that, the ink is dry. Gyrthalion began as a blank sphere. By simply defining its shape and context, we have derived a magnetic mountain range, a bipolar weather engine, and a culture that fears the horizon. This is the power of structural world building. The story didn't happen by accident, it happened because we drew the lines first. You can follow along with this process on your own with the help of the Worldbuilder's Guidebook, available at the link below. In the next video, we will explore planetary size and how distance and measurements affect not only your gameplay, but also the story you are trying to tell. If you have found this video helpful, remember to like and subscribe so you can follow our journey while we build Gyrthalion.